so our session today is all about trust. For those of you who, thank you, Linda, we've got Dove House Hospice. Oh, correct, great. So amongst others, we have today, I think there's 14 of us on this webinar. We've got Trinity, we've got Peace, we've got St. Christopher's, we've got the Donna Louise, we've got St. Luke's. Marie, shout out, who else have we got on? Dove House.
And with Linda Johnson from?
And Linda Johnson, you're from Dove.
Beaumont House.
Hey?
Beaumont House.
Beaumont House, yippee, thank you.
Hey!
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, as usual, what I always do is I give you my photo of the week or the month and my top tip. And for those of you who can see me on the webcam, you can see I'm looking holiday-esque because I have literally walked in an hour ago coming back from my summer holidays. And this is me yesterday. You can see my red nose is conveniently hidden by my second son's shadow. And my daughter's got her eyes closed. And my eldest son is at the back. And we get together about twice a year now. And we managed to spend 48 hours together in France. And it was superb. And I feel so good, so rested, so happy to have had that family support. And when we get to the Casita model, of course, you remember that families come at the bottom. They're essential to support. And that what we do when we go on holiday is we get away from things. And that means we get perspective. We get that rest and recovery that we so desperately need if we're going to remain resilient. So, top tip. If you haven't booked yourself a summer holiday, book yourself a summer holiday. We all need something to look forward to in our diaries. And if it can't be a summer holiday, because that's not a position that you're in, you can still take some time out, and you can take some time out to look after yourself. So you could think about going for a walk. You can do something that means that you don't have to spend money, but you can care for yourself and get away from it all so that you do get perspective, because you never get perspective when you're up close and personal. So that's my photo of the week and my top tip. So let's just remind ourselves about what resilience is in this 45-minute webinar. And we remember that it's this capacity to withstand knocks and bounce back or bounce forward in a psychologically healthy manner, which doesn't reduce us but enhances us. And we're always basing what we do inside this Casita model by Stefan Vanistendael, who introduced it through St. Christopher's to the hospice world in the 90s. And as I've said just now, we've got these networks of relationships of family and friends that lie at the bottom, and we've got this network, and then we discover sense and meaning. When we're thinking about trust, of course you learn about trust through those early relationships that you have, and your friends and family are particularly important, and then you make sense of it, and it becomes a coherent experience for you as you do that learning. But when we're thinking about trust and resilience, again, particularly with trust, if we don't feel trusted, of course there'll be an impact on our self-esteem on the first floor. The way of dealing with it naturally is with some constructive humor, but sometimes that's not possible. So we have to explore what this is and think about the meaning of what trust is in the relationships that we hold, particularly at work, because it can be so damaging on the one side, but so helpful and supportive on the other. So our overall agenda is going to be about thinking about trust, and I thought that we ought to not only reconsider what resilience is, but consider what the nature of trust is. And for me, I listened to a guy called Ron Burt, who is the guru of social networks, and he works as professor of sociology and strategy at Chicago Booth Business School, and he looks at social networks and what makes social capital. And of course, what makes social capital, i.e. the relationships that we have, is trust. And he thinks that trust is the willingness to take a risk in the expectation of a positive outcome. So you will take a risk and do something for somebody expecting something good to happen back. So if you think about how that relates, and why I wanted you to watch the Cirque du Soleil video, that's all about you're going to stick your hands out, you're going to catch somebody, right? And you're going to let go of your trapeze in the expectation that someone's going to catch you, right? So that's your positive, the expectation of a positive outcome. You will take that risk You will hurl yourself off the trapeze, knowing that I've got on the roof here, Amber, Ruth or Marie will catch you. And that's the essence of everything we do at work. You have to take a risk in the expectation that someone will answer your email or support you in a meeting or just go out of their way to say how you're doing. So that for me is what trust is. So then the question is, how does this relate to resilience? So let's think about it. When you are feeling not resilient, you have to trust somebody to be able to say, to disclose the fact that you are not feeling resilient. Because if you think they're going to rush around and tell everybody, right, you're not going to do it. Or you might not do it. You might think twice about it. Now, you need to be able to disclose to build relationships. So if I don't tell you something about me, we're never going to have a relationship. And so if I tell you something about me, the likelihood is that you'll tell me something about you. So that is the fundamental way that a relationship is formed. And we test each other out as we form a relationship with little bits of information and going, oh, is this safe? So that's how we build a relationship. So we need to disclose to build relationships, to be proactive, and we talked about proactive coping. I think it was in session 4 or 5. So to reach out and ask for help from other people takes trust, and you need a relationship. So that we know relationships is where our resilience is built. So you have the relationship, you can reach out, and you know that somebody will honour whatever it is you're telling them about you. So that's what trust is for me. So I just want to talk a little bit now about what we know about trust. And I've got 3 slides here that I'm just going to chat you through, and then we're going to be doing some doing. So just bear with me for the following 3 slides. So what we know about trust in general is this. You're not born trusting, right? A baby doesn't pop out the womb going, whoa, mum, I trust you. So it's what we call a secondary emotion. So we have some primary emotions, which are happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, and surprise. And those cross-culturally everywhere. And there's talk from the Ekman, who is Paul Ekman, who's the psychologist who started working on this in the 70s, that contempt might be another basic emotion, because you know very well when someone is contemptuous of you. But you think about it, a baby, you know, there's all those lovely experiments, and that you can just get those fab YouTube videos when you see mums putting lemon on their baby's tongues, and then they'll go, and they're kind of 24 hours old. So we know that, you know, and happiness is one of the first things a baby learns to do is to smile. So now, we always take trust from a self-biased perspective. We always think that I'm trustworthy and you're not. They aren't, we are. So you never would go into a meeting and say, do you know what, please don't trust me on this. They are all correct, I'm absolutely wrong. I mean, you might in the second instance, but in the first instance you probably wouldn't. So we have quite a large chunk of self-bias in this. But we do know that it's most often, wherever you're coming from, I can let you down badly twice, but after that is pretty much game over. So we've got a 2 strikes rule, and then I have to work incredibly hard to get it back, and I have to really demonstrate to you very strongly that I am reliable. Now there's some interesting data here. When I was just doing my homework, getting ready for this webinar, I was looking up about negative gossip, particularly in the healthcare sector, and it seems that negative gossip is particularly prevalent and an issue in healthcare, and lots of negative gossip indicates low trust, indicates a low trust environment. Because if I'm running around being frankly bitchy about other people, it's not going to create a healthy environment, and then other people are going to do the same about me. So although we know that gossip is a coping mechanism, it depends on the kind of gossip that it is. And negative gossip is related to suboptimal patient care, and I put all the references at the bottom of the slide. But I think that most importantly of all, or perhaps not most importantly of all, perhaps it's the patient care that does come first in this, but for you personally, it's particularly related to exhaustion and burnout, and that is lack of resilience. And that's a paper that was published in 2014. I've put some of these papers in the Resilience WhatsApp group. So that's what we know about trust. So let's think about trust at work. Now, if we have a non-trusting relationship, there's going to be a high tax for that low trust. Right? It means that I won't do things for you. So the cogs will grind very slowly, or that you won't do things for me. It will somehow magically slip to the bottom of your to-do list. And just please remember that at work, we are very highly attuned to mistrust. That mistrust, now we're so highly attuned to it that if I think that I've done something for you, but that hasn't been balanced out by you for me, we get into an instant non-reciprocation position, and that's bad for a group because the group very quickly starts to feel it. So, and then the group starts to take sides, and then we get factions. And we talked about team resilience, but trust, it's so obvious this, it's the root of a good functioning team. Trust busting, of course, because we're so highly attuned to it, is more visible and memorable, right? You'll stick in your head. So, for example, if I give you a tenner and you don't pay it back, that will stick in my head. And I can remember people who owe me £10 from about 40 years ago, right? Because we are so sensitive to this thing. And you will never walk into work saying, wow, you know, gosh, our boss did everything they said they would. You remember the one little thing that they didn't, or the one time when you were presenting and they sat down and they had a twinge in their back and made maybe a grimace, and you went, oh, what did I do? And it's not about you, but you don't know that. So that's the example of sensitivity. Now, trust is very important because when you are in a position of leadership at work, and so many of you are, you can loan your trust to somebody else. So somebody new comes in, and suppose I start working for you and you know me a bit, you might say, hey, Jess, go and talk to Peter, and you'll tell Peter that I'm on my way. And Peter will trust me because he trusts you. And Bill Gates calls that the trilogy of trust. So you can loan your trust to other people, but you have to then be careful, particularly in a leadership position, because if they let you down, that's a problem. So here's my final input slide. So what we know about building trust. So as you saw with the Cirque du Soleil clip, it's built in that moment. So in that moment when you're in a meeting and you've done something and somebody else grabs the credit for it, it's that moment that they do it. So you can see how the Dutch have a saying, which is that trust comes on foot and leaves on horseback, because it's so hard to build, so quick to go. But it's a result of choices that you make or don't make in tiny moments, in very small instances, interactions. And the biggest way that leaders create trust is through allocation of resources. And that is so acute in the work that you do, because if I get something, someone else doesn't. And it is often a zero-sum game. So you have to be very clear in a position of leadership about why people are getting things and what they're getting, and managing that in the moment and being as fair as you can be, because and being transparent when you can't, because otherwise you get that negative gossip, what's it called, wash, you know, kind of ripple effect. There we go. Thank you. So I think the other really important thing to remember, particularly in hospice work, is that trust takes rehearsal. Right? There are processes, there are people behind those processes, and there are always other people making things happen, and we quite often forget about those other people, which is why the next webinar is about remembering who they are and thinking about how we thank them and how we recognize people who help us in our work. So trust takes rehearsal, it takes practice, as we saw with the Cirque du Soleil, and there are always other people enabling us this. So you might think it's in an immediate relationship, but there are other people around, and there's also the context that we work in. Now, this is the most important bit about trust, I think, is that when you have a trusting relationship and you've got some credit in the trust bank, what happens is that people will give you the benefit of the doubt. So They'll just allow you a little bit more slack than jumping to conclusions about people's motivations and intentions. So the point of this is not just to have trust because it's a nice thing to have and it makes me feel more resilient, but you remember I said there was a high tax on low trust, right? This is the upside. So you just think a little bit more widely, and when you think a bit more widely, you can be more creative and problem solve more easily. I've got a whole bunch of research for anybody who wants some of that. So now that's enough input from me. What I love for you to do is for the next 10 minutes, I would like you in your rooms or with whoever you're with, is just get a piece of flip chart paper or a piece of A4, and just, if you haven't got that, just imagine a continuum, a long line. And the left end is for anyone who feels that at work, I trust you until you show me that I can't. And the right end is for anyone who feels, I'll trust you when you've earned it. And I'd like you to place yourself as a group of people of 4 or 5, just 4 or 5, so it's not 20 of you all trying to do it at once. You can share all that after we're finished. I'd just like you to place where you are, where you feel you belong at work, because sometimes we can be different and our work context can change us. And when you've done that, I'd like you to think, if you have a new relationship and somebody's at the different end of the spectrum to you, what is it that you need to make that relationship work? So it doesn't matter where you're at, then do this and then have a conversation. You've got somebody new coming in, what is it you need from them so you can build a trusting relationship and make it work? All right, so we'll take 10 minutes to do that. So I think that we all agree that we can be too trusting, and thank you, Willowbrook, for saying that. And when you're too trusting, then you feel like you've been had for a mug sometimes. Or at least I know I've put myself in that position, and then it's made me kind of withdraw again. And so I think that the more aware we are of what we do and what we need, and the more we disclose what we need from someone else, the easier it gets. But for example, if somebody new is working with me and I know that they need evidence from me that I'm trustworthy, I like to say at the beginning of a relationship, what is it that you need from me so that you feel you can trust me and that we could work together well. And so then I hear it, and then when I've given that back to them, I said, well, this is what you said you needed from me. To what extent have I provided it for you? So that I'm demonstrating that I'm trying to build a trustworthy relationship, or trusting relationship, where I am a trustworthy person. But you're right, we can be shaped by context, and when resources are scarce, trust goes down. There's no doubt about it. So I just want to give you, a little trust equation, which has really helped me, and I'm going to just tell you an example. I'd like you to, as I go through this, please do write this down, because you're going to do paired work around this particular trust equation, which I have found to be very useful in having conversations when I'm trying to fix trust. So this trust equation consists of 4 parts on the top and 1 part on the bottom, and each part is out of 10. So we have got reliability on the top, we have got openness on the top, we've got clarity, and we've got concern from others over self-interest. Now, the top is positive. Those are good things. The bottom is negative. But there's something to say about self-interest. Unless you are a holy person in the church, and even then, I think we all have a little bit of self-interest in what we do. We all want to look good. We want to feel good. We all want to do good, dare I suggest it. So we always have some self-interest in a situation. I think that none of us here wear halos. So that's the equation. So I hope you've written it down, and I'm just going to talk you through an example. So I used to work, note the word used, to work with somebody called Bridget, and we were asked by a very well-known education establishment to put together a workshop for negotiation skills. And this was the first time I'd been asked by this prestigious education establishment to do a workshop, so I was very excited. And Bridget, my then colleague, lived in France, and so what we did was a week before we split the work up, and we said that we would both do certain things, and I would come up with some exercises and a rough sketch of how it could do, and she would write a couple of case studies and do another couple of exercises. So I travelled down over the weekend. I took a day off, went to France over the weekend, and it was February. And as I got off the plane, she arrived at Geneva Airport to pick me up. So reliability, I'd given her a 2 because in the car on the way up, what she said to me was, there's been an amazing snow dump this week. I've done no work, but I'm sure we can fix that. I've done absolutely nothing at all. So let's just rate her. So for me, she'd been reliable, a 2 out of 10. She'd been 2 out of 10 because she had actually picked me up. Openness is about what's general to this situation. Had she been open? Well, she was open at the very last possible minute. Clarity, at the very last possible minute, she told me she'd done none of the work, none of the exercise. She hadn't thought about it for one day. And what was her concern for me in all of that? Well, she just thought I'd pick the slack up. So I've given her a 1. So I've got 2 plus 2 plus 2. So I've got 7 over 10 there, because I think her self-interest was pretty high in all of that. Maybe I could be generous and give her a 9. 7 over 9, we haven't even got a 1. So for me, if you have a relationship that is 4, totals 4 or less, I think there's a trust issue there. And when I look at all of those things, I think the thing that bugged me most was her lack of concern for me. And she just thought, oh, well, Jess will make up for it at the end of that. Why bother to think about that? Because doing this gave me a way to talk to her about the situation that I was in. And so that's the important thing. So having a conversation, if you want to mend trust, you have to have a conversation. The question is, where do you start? And so we know that trust is built on being reliable. So if someone isn't being reliable, then you can have this conversation. You can show them what's going on for you. So I do have to, now it took me about 3 years, but I did get there. I did think in the end, gosh, you know, yes, I'd been reliable, but how open had I been with her about the fact that this was extremely important for us? And how clear had I been about what I wanted out of it? Because actually my self-interest was pretty high too. But it did take me 3 years to come to that and realize that I had a part to play in this relationship working out or not working out. So I hope you've all written that down, because what I'd love you to do for the next few minutes is, in pairs, is to think of a relationship which you'd like to build trust in. And we've all got them, in work, out of work, doesn't matter where it is. And if you'd rather take, of course, please don't betray any confidences. But just assess where somebody else is on the continuum that we've already talked about. Are they someone who needs to have that trust immediately, they can show it immediately, or is it now in a position where it has to be earned? And then I'd like you just to work through the equation. And got any chat, comments, please put them in. And let's take 5 minutes a person to do that. So I make it 2:37, and so I'll come back to you at 2:47. So what I'd love to know from you is what thoughts you've been having about how to build trust and where issues start to lie, because we've been having some chatting here about family relationships and the difference in a family relationship, and how if you want to fix a relationship you have to be prepared to go all the way and not just 50%, because the other person doesn't move, So your comments would be great to know. And I would also love to know how many of you can see the slide which says think of a relationship in which you'd like to build trust, because for some people I gather the screen is stuck. So if you could just pop in the chat A, your thoughts, and B, what screen you could see, that would be fantastic. As always, I'm going to look forward to welcoming you to the next one, which will be on August, the first Thursday of August. And meanwhile, if anyone wants to link in or tweet, I'm happy 925, and I love to link in. So please let's keep the conversation going, and if you'd like to join on WhatsApp too, that would be great.